Hello, I'm Ashley. Welcome to my space here. I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, whenever you are. Um, I wanted to make a video today talking about the mother wound. I felt it was perfect timing for Mother's Day, and sometimes it can be challenging for women to feel connected to their mothers in a healthy way on Mother's Day, so it can be kind of a hard day. Like if you don't have a healthy relationship with your mother, then you're not really going to enjoy Mother's Day that much, or it's not going to be something that you look forward to or enjoy, I guess, or celebrate maybe. So that's something I just want to talk about because I've had a really unhealthy and toxic and chaotic relationship with my mother, and I just wanted to kind of talk about what I've learned from it and how much it's taught me and how much it's really taught me how much I've grown spiritually from this mother wound. And we all have a mother wound, whether your mother wound is like, and your mother wound doesn't have to be severe. It doesn't have to be like I received like psychological and emotional abuse from my mom, and so it really took a toll on my self-esteem. I had like no confidence, no self-trust, no self-belief. I really just struggled. I struggled in relationships. The mother wound can affect relationships, not even just like friendships. You can have trouble making friends or keeping friends. And I kind of struggled with that, like even throughout like middle school. Like middle school is hard and for me, and for my mother, it was like more like, okay, so for her, like how I have to see it and how I've like reframed it and how I've been able to heal and move beyond those, beyond the emotional abuse and beyond the, the psychological abuse of, being put down, and especially by somebody like you love so much, it's your mom, and like you trust them and you believe them and you believe the words that they tell you, and so when they like cut you down. And like for me, I know my mother was never doing it intentionally. I know that she suffers herself, like psychologically she suffers, and she suffers with her own self-esteem and believing that she's worthy and valuable and believing in herself and trust in herself. She struggles with that, so this is something that she's passed down to me. And so for me, like as I began to awaken and heal this mother wound and really begin to place boundaries, because one thing with my mom is she doesn't have any boundaries, especially emotionally. Like she will unload all her stuff onto you. Like she will make you feel like, you're her responsibility. And that's kind of what it felt like my entire life, is like I had to be responsible for her and take care of her and those needs that she couldn't like meet for herself. And so I completely neglected myself in order to make sure my mom was happy, and and then it just sucked me dry. And so what I want to kind of talk about here is how if you have this relationship with your mother, and I would say that I suffered from like narcissistic abuse, and my mother was very narcissistic. Sometimes she still can, because it's literally part of who she is. But there's varying degrees of narcissism, and so it's just something. It's like a coping mechanism that she learned in early childhood, is how to like manipulate, how to, and she also received a lot of psychological abuse herself, and like she was put down. She was emotionally abused, and she was verbally abused, and so this took a toll on her psyche as well, obviously. And so those words were internalized, and then in order for her to process them, it was easier for her to just project them onto me rather than dealing with those emotions herself and dealing with her own insecurities, because that's really truly what it is. It's like not believing that you're worthy of being treated better than that. And so and when you feel like that, when you're a victim of like abuse, whether it be emotional, physical, psychological, emotionally, whatever, it's like where was I going? When you become a victim of, like when you're a victim of that kind of abuse, like it will take a toll on your self-esteem. It'll make you feel like, it'll take you down. It'll make you feel like you're nothing, like you're absolutely worthless. And so when you feel like that as a person, and inside of you feel worthless, and there's a part of you, even if you pretend or you wear a mask, or you don't, like you overcompensate by, like spending a lot of money, or there's lots of different ways it can manifest. Like you overcompensate by like telling, like having a job where you work an extended amount of hours that helps you to make up for your low self-esteem, or you're in unhealthy relationships that feel like ego gratification. These are all symptoms of like low self-esteem and not believing in your worthiness and believing how well you deserve to be treated. And so instead of, talking to herself nicely, internally she was like beating herself up, and so she would project that onto me. Because what happens is when you're in that state of like feeling so worthless, you want other people to be there with you. Like you can't celebrate. And so that's what happened to me with as a child. Like and even now it's really challenging for me to express my joy or express my higher vibrational emotions around my mother, because she can't hold them. She has no capacity for them. She has no relationship to those emotions herself, and so she can't relate to me when I'm in those emotions. She can only relate to me when I'm feeling down or I'm feeling low about myself, because then I'm in the same vibration as her. And so unconsciously for our entire life, she's tried to pull me down into her vibration. But here's the thing, guys, on a soul level, I came here and I personally chose her as my mother so that I could learn how to stand up for myself, so I could learn how to place boundaries. Because as an empath, you're going to attract narcissistic people, whether it's you incarnate with your mom who has those tendencies and it happens at a young age, or whether you get in a relationship later on with a husband or a wife who's like psychologically abusive or emotionally like manipulative and like sucks your energy like an energy vampire, like it's just like somebody that carries a very low vibration, and so they want to feed off like a sensitive person or an empath, something that they can rile up emotionally, like so that they can feed their own ego, so that they can make themselves feel better, so that they can feel, because they struggle to feel. And because they're addicted not to those higher vibrational feelings of joy and love and peace and acceptance and like passion, because they don't feel those, they're going to be addicted to lower based emotions such as drama, chaos, and they'll start drama, or they'll start fights, or and you'll see this, and it can play out in so many different ways for each person. But it's like when you grow up in that kind of environment, then it creates a lot of internal chaos, and you have like this internal friction all the time. So what it's really taught me, and it's funny because my mom will mention when I was a baby, like when I was first born, like I was very like chill, and I could just lay on the floor and look up at the ceiling for hours. And it's funny because I can be like that now. Like I can be very meditative and just lay on the floor and be completely content. Like I think it's really helped me. Like, and I've been living with my mom for the last about 8 months, and it's been super challenging, especially to be like face to face with your shadow, because that's what my mom is. She is my shadow, and she taught me everything I have ever known. And there are things, this is what happens when you reparent yourself, because you get qualities and traits from your mother and from your parents that make up who you are. Like you wouldn't be who you are without your parents, right? So what a lot of us do is like we grow up and we have all this resentment towards our mothers and or their fathers. I've done a video on healing the father wound, because my father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and that brought up a lot of resentment. But the same goes, like I've carried so much resentment towards my mother, and why should I wait until she's gonna die for me to heal these wounds and really take a look at these things and spend more time loving my mom and appreciating her, rather than holding resentments or like not forgiving, or like being guarded, or which I still can be, because my mother wound has really hurt me the most, probably. It's just in different ways, like the mother wound, like I said, it really takes a toll on your self-esteem and your worthiness. And so for me, like I struggled. Like one thing that my mom always did, and this isn't just to call my mom out, this is to help you, like if you ever have struggled with this, or if you struggled with your mom being like highly critical, and you have to see, and when you're first healing, it's gonna like create a lot of anger, you're gonna have to heal a lot of emotions, but the more you begin to heal it, the more your perspective begins to shift, and you lift a little bit higher and a little bit higher and a little bit higher, and you begin to see, and your perspective begins to shift, and you no longer see like your mom was doing this to you like intentionally to hurt your feelings. You have to see that your parent, whether it be your mother or your father, because you can experience this from either spectrum, it doesn't matter, why they would extend this like sort of emotional abuse onto you is because it's something that they experience, and they're just passing down from what they've experienced. And so it's really our in my opinion, it's our responsibility to really you have to like start all over and begin to build up your own self-esteem with your own self-care, your own self-love. So that's why I love the relationship I've had with my mom. Is not your typical like, she taught me how to be like the best version of myself, because she didn't. She taught me how to be like probably the most unhealthiest version of myself possible, mentally, emotionally, physically. And so it was like the opposite way. She taught me how to generate and create all that self-love, all that self-care, all those things I needed to be taken care of, and all those things that she truly needed to be taken care of. Like, I always think about that, like, why I wish I could go back, you know, and mother her, so that when she was going to have me, she would know how to mother me, right? Because I would mother her how I needed to be mothered, and then she would have known how to mother me. So sometimes I think about that, because I definitely know that with my mother and with other of my family members, that I've reincarnated in different like scenarios with them. Like, for example, like, I've definitely been my mom's mom in another lifetime. And I could have been very like cold and emotionally closed down and emotionally shut off, emotionally unavailable, you know, like she was in this lifetime. And it could be something that we're just playing out, you know. And so one thing that she's passed down to me is, you know, like victim consciousness. And that was probably one of the hardest things. So if you suffer from that in any capacity, like, and you're trying your best to move beyond like the mental, because that's what for me, it was the hardest with healing my mother wound. It was the psychological, it was the mental, it was how I spoke to myself, because my mom's voice became my inner voice. And my mom is probably she's highly critical even to this day. All she talks about generally is like all her ailments, all the things that are wrong with her. She generally never feels good in her body. Like, there's always something wrong with her, or you know, especially like in a health sense, you know. So, and she's just a very negative person, so she'll talk very negatively about herself. She'll put herself down outwardly, like she'll speak it out loud. And so, of course, like, she's gonna, you know, do that. She's gonna be very highly critical of me. And these are actually just projections of her own wounds within herself. And what I've had to learn is to not take it personally. And I still do. Sometimes I still do, because it's hard not to, because she's your mother, you know, and you have that like attachment to her. But it's really about breaking that attachment and seeing it from more of like a neutral perspective. And seeing her, because that's what healing the mother wound does. It helps you come out, like I was saying, it helps you see from a higher perspective. And now you're seeing your parent as just like this wounded child, just like you were, you know. And being able to extend that compassion, extend that love and understanding and empathy to that person that originally hurt you. Then this is like extending forgiveness. This is how you learn how to forgive. You don't hold on, hold on to the pains. Like, you understand, like, oh, I see that this person may have caused me pain in the moment because they were feeling pain in the moment, you know. And even though, because like as empaths, we're going to take things very personally, we're going to be very sensitive to energies, and so if we don't take care of ourselves, and we're not healthy. And this doesn't just mean healthy like physically, this means healthy like energetically, like placing boundaries, having really strong boundaries, and knowing when to say no, knowing when to not overextend your energy, knowing how to tend to your energy, like how to raise your vibration, how to center your energy, and how to feel balanced in your energy, how to feel like equilibrium and feeling like safe mentally, and really building yourself up. Like I was saying, building that self-esteem. What can happen is if you grow up with a parent that had really low self-esteem, like they'll just pass that wound down to you, so you'll struggle with that. And you have to just rebuild yourself. You have to build yourself up, literally. Like, and that's what we want so badly, is that for us, we want that to come from our parents. We want our parents to build us up, right? And that is their job, technically, to build a healthy ego. But if they don't even have a healthy ego themselves, then how can they pass that down, right? So instead of like, because sometimes I would remember, like, when I was healing the mother wound or healing the father wound, like being like, gosh, why, you know, like, and you can get frustrated. You seriously can. Like, I wish they could have just, you know, said this to me more, you know, and so that I would believe it now. But it's like, really, you have to put in the work and really rewire your mind to know that you're always there for it, because that's what the inner mother does. It nurtures us, it comforts us, it makes us feel safe and at peace and comfortable and relaxed. And if our mothers weren't like that, if they were very cold and they were very distant and they had a lot of anxiety, or they suffered from mental health, or they suffered from anything, maybe addiction, so, and other or like alcoholism or anything like that, or depression. That could be considered like mental health. But if you're, and then you have to like feel like you have to be this caretaker, and you like begin to feel like you're carrying this burden, and you have to like, and you can carry this into adulthood, and you'll see a lot of women who will, end up being caretakers of their mother. And it's not like, there's a difference between like caretaking your mother and being there for her when she needs your support, or but like it's not something that she should be like relying on you. And like for me and my mother, we've had a very codependent relationship, and it's something we've been healing, and it's honestly been something I'm so grateful to be able to heal, because as much as I don't necessarily, this isn't where I necessarily want to be. It's not that I don't enjoy my mother's company or that I don't love her or anything like that. It's just like I would rather not, but this is where I would prefer to be somewhere else, right? But the thing is you have to learn what acceptance is. And that's the hardest part, is just like accepting where you're at, and accepting that you experience the things you experience in order to grow, to become a better version of yourself, not necessarily like hold yourself back or keep you a victim. And that's the whole purpose, is to really bring yourself out of this victim mindset by rebuilding your self-esteem and saying like, I believe in you, like you're doing a great job. And like I was saying, we want that to come from our parents, but it doesn't always come from our parents. And so we have to learn how to do that ourselves, and I think that's our responsibility. But let me tell you, it is hard, and sometimes you're going to want it to come from outside source, and it can, like it's important to surround yourself with friends that can hold space for you, and that can, and like I said, if you struggle from a mother wound, you might have fears of intimacy, and it can make you feel very closed off. I know that I struggle with that, because I know it's something my mother also struggles with, and it's something I learned from her, and that's how we learned how to relate. So just observe I know I've been observing my mother, like I've been keeping track and like keeping notes and like psychological notes since I got here, of how to relate, and so that's what I was saying. Like, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I was saying that you keep the traits that you really like, or that make you, that serve you, and the ones that don't serve you, the belief systems that don't serve you, that your mother taught you, the habits that she taught you that don't serve you, like you get rid of those and you just change those, but you still keep those aspects of her that, you enjoy, or that, make you, or even if you find yourself, because this is going to happen throughout your life, because you have to remember your parents are who you are, but it's also about learning how to detach from them and seeing like, okay, I don't have to carry on these certain patterns, like I don't have to be a complete like replica of my parents' behaviors. I can explore my own belief system, I can explore my own emotional guidance system, I can explore my own, like my own spiritual connection, and then you can like develop your own beliefs, and you have your roots, which are still parts of who you are, but then you also have this part of you that's like your soul and makes up who you are, and not just who you were told to be. Rather, you expand more in emotions, you expand more in your heart space, you expand more mentally, and then you begin to shift your perception, and you begin to relate in brand new ways, in ways that are more healthy. Because if all you know are unhealthy relationships, if your parents had a very unhealthy relationship, this is going to be your relationship blueprint, your psychological relationship blueprint, and it's what you're going to attract most likely. And so for me, I know personally, like I remember observing my parents at a very young age, and like saying to myself at a very young age, about 6 years old, I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I will never love, like, I remember like cutting my heart off at 6 years old. So that's really intense. And it's like, as soon as you begin to cut your heart off, then you're relying on your mind. And our mind is what, it keeps us in those mental traps of, especially if we didn't have a good ego. Like I said, if we didn't have somebody building us up, and all they were doing was tearing us down, then we're going to rely on our mind to guide us through life, and it's going to be telling us all these negative thoughts all the time that aren't truth. They're just a recording of what was downloaded from our environment or from our caregivers, and it's like inherited negative beliefs about ourselves, and so we have to be like, okay, no, I know that's not true. Like, I know that I am a strong person, like I know that I can do things, like I believe in myself, like, and sometimes people aren't going to believe in us, and if we don't have that support, we have to learn how to be that support system ourselves. But we also have to learn how to nurture ourselves and take care of ourselves, and be gentle and kind to ourselves, and be that loving voice, that gentle voice. So you can kind of think of this really beautiful visual come to me last night to kind of describe, because this is kind of hard, because the feminine energy is very trusting, very receptive, very like hopeful, has like a lot of trust, a lot of faith. It trusts in the unknown, the divine feminine does, because it trusts its own knowing. So, but it can be very challenging because ego will come in right away and try to make you like second guess yourself, and this is where you begin to overthink. And so it can be really challenging at first when you're really trying to heal your mother wound, to really learn to listen to your emotions again, because it's our feminine energy, is our emotions. So what you're doing when you're remothering yourself is you're reconnecting to your emotional body. So if your mom did not have a good relationship with her emotional body, maybe like for me, like one thing I'll get into is like eating. Like my mom was an emotional eater and she passed that habit down to me, and that's something that I do as well. And so, and that's nothing that's bad or to be ashamed of. It's just something, it's a coping mechanism you learned in order to help you with your emotional body, with the disconnect from your emotional body. So what we're really learning how to do when we're healing our mother wound is how to reconnect with our emotional body, reconnect with our emotions in general. And when we can reconnect with our emotions, what we're reconnecting with is our heart space. Because remember, we came out of our heart space, like I said, I cut my heart off at like 6 years old because I was like, nope. So we're reconnecting with our heart space. We're coming back out of our minds, and now we're allowing our hearts to lead. And we're leading from a space of like love and from trust. But if we don't trust love, if we've been betrayed by love, especially like I've been betrayed by my mother, and like, and these are just like little things like, so this is a very highly dysfunctional attribute in a family that's like has dysfunction, and that is like talking behind each other's backs. And so one of my mom and like my brothers, one of their relationships, like one part of their relationship was, you know, talking about me behind my back, you know. And this hurt me, you know, and it made me feel like, you know, or, you know, it just made me feel, it hurt my feelings, honestly. And it made me feel betrayed, you know, it's like I couldn't trust them. And so, like, every time they were together, I would, like, constantly worry, you know, like, what are they saying about me, you know, or, you know, like, what are they talking about? And now it's just, like, now I've gotten to the point where it's just, like, I've asked him multiple times not to, and so like and my wish has been granted, but it's also been a learning curve for our family to heal this, because we honestly didn't see it, you know. I didn't see it until I began to awaken and really heal these aspects within myself, and I was like, okay, like I have to shift my relationship with my mother. I have to shift my relationships with my family members, you know, like in order for like me to evolve. And I mean, I can't make my family evolve, but I can see how our relationship has evolved. And that's why one of the reasons I'm making this video is because the work that I've done and the work that I've put in has also helped my family members, and it has helped my mom, and it's helped my relationship with my mom. It's helped our relationship, and we've moved through some of the hardest times ever. And, you know, we're still there for each other, and we move through fights, and we've had fights since we've lived together. And like, it's just funny because we move through them, and there's forgiveness, and there's love, and there's understanding, there's compassion, and there's growth, you know. And I think that's all that matters, even if it's the littlest growth, you know. And we're still always going to be learning. We're still always going to be like triggering one another so that we help each other evolve and reveal to ourselves more of our ability to extend love and compassion and forgiveness. And I think that's the whole purpose, is like there's going to be lots of things that, you know, we regret, or lots of things that we wish we wouldn't have done, but at the end of the day, they have been done, and they have been experienced, but that doesn't mean you can't grow from them or learn from them. And I think you know, we're really meant to learn from our mothers and not just, you know, resent them or be angry at them. Like, even if we didn't have a healthy relationship with them, they were obviously our mothers for a reason. So what are they teaching us, even if they're teaching us something on a soul level? So one of the hardest things, and okay, and actually I do have this book here I'm going to share with you. Oh wait, no, I don't have it here. Shoot. But I do have this book that really helped me to shift my perspective on like why I would have chose this experience, like with my mother, and experiencing like the psychological and the emotional abuse. And it really helped me reframe, to see the lessons I was learning, like I said, self-love, self-care, like how to nurture myself, how to validate myself, how to give myself that love that I needed, how to really set boundaries and place boundaries, and to not betray myself, you know, to really learn to trust myself, to trust my intuition, to trust my feelings again, to trust my heart again. And she taught me that in the opposite way. So we really, as souls, we learn in contrast. So in order for me to learn that, I had to learn it from contrast. Whereas I didn't learn it from a relationship where there was lots of love and there was lots of compassion, there was lots of empathy and understanding, and I was taught healthy boundaries and I was taught healthy ways of relating. That's not how I learned. It was the opposite. So I had to learn in contrast, and I had to really experience and be immersed deeply in those feelings so that I could learn how to cultivate like self-reliance, which is the opposite of codependency, and really learn how to believe in myself, how to rely on myself, especially emotionally and mentally, and know that I could hold those spaces for myself, and know that I could really be there for myself, that I didn't have to abandon myself anymore, that I didn't have to neglect myself anymore, that I could truly be there with my emotions, all of them, even the ones that are really uncomfortable. So that's what I'm really grateful for my mother wound, for my mother in general, is that she came to teach me those things. As much as like our relationship has been hard and will continue to grow and develop, and I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited to see how much we grow. And I'm really grateful. It's been really nice to like do yoga with her, and to like, for me, one of the things that was probably the hardest is like, for me, like I had to really like, and you can see this in children, to beg for my mother's attention as a child. She was just very distant, she was just never present. And I would, like as a child, you're present, but when your parents aren't present in the present moment, or they wish they were somewhere else, they just didn't want to be there. You can feel this as a kid. And so like, they just feel really distant. And so you'll begin to withdraw, you'll begin to mimic their energy. And so like, when you become withdrawn, you can just become very like depressed, and your vibration just becomes very low. And then you can become prone to like addictions and, like suicidal thoughts, or things like that. So, and like something my mom has passed down to me is mental health, and one thing she's really good at is pretending that she doesn't struggle with that. Like, she's really good at wearing a mask. She's been really good. She's been doing that for a really long time, is how to cover up those feelings. And so I really learned how to mask my feelings. I really learned how to cover up my feelings, how to pretend they didn't exist, to neglect them, to abandon them. And the more I did this, the more I would disconnect from my heart, and the more my heart would like, my heart would, like, I would actually not want to be in my heart. Remember how I was like 6 years old and I wanted to go to my mind? So that would happen. And, but now my mind is a very like beautiful place to be, because I've had to retrain myself psychologically by like sitting in meditation and like repeating positive affirmations, and, just like holding myself while I cry for hours, staring at the ceiling for hours. Like sometimes I could spend like 12 to 13 hours literally just laying, holding myself, and that's just part of the process of reparenting yourself, is like being there for yourself. And in those moments like where you have to just lay and you have to just cry, or you just have to like stomp, or you just have to scream, or you just have to like whatever, let it out, like not abandoning yourself in those moments, but actually truly connecting even deeper in those moments. And that's what creates that sense of security in children. That's what creates that sense of like support, and it makes them be able to like feel like they can take care of themselves, on their own, like psychologically, mentally, physically, emotionally, and be able to provide for themselves and develop a very like strong sense of self, rather than just living based off the parents wounding and like, instead of them abandoning you. So like, you may have been abandoned as a kid emotionally by either one of your parents, and instead of abandoning yourself now in those moments like you were taught to, because that's how they were treating you, is learning how to connect with yourself in those moments. And I feel like that's the biggest thing with mothers, is that connection and developing that connection. And when you have that disconnect, it can make you feel very lonely, and you can suffer from things of like isolation and just like not feeling seen, and like feeling invisible, feeling like you don't belong, feeling like you're worthless. So it's like really creating this stability within yourself that makes you feel like, yes, I have purpose here, I belong here, I am safe here, like creating that within yourself, so that you feel really strong in mind, body, and soul. And you really create this really healthy feminine energy within yourself that nurtures herself, but doesn't allow herself to be abused. And my mom allowed herself to be abused, and I watched that, and I watched her get treated not very nicely, and so I didn't treat myself very nicely. And if I wouldn't have done the work to heal those wounds, I probably would have attracted, that same kind of relationship where I didn't necessarily get treated very nicely, or I would have settled, or maybe I would have kept myself in isolation and never been in a relationship at all because I was too scared to ever love again, too scared to put my heart out there again, too scared to be in my heart again. So as much as healing the mother wound has created a lot of disruption in my family dynamic, and also just with my mother in general, it's been really challenging because I would ever since the beginning. This has been a few years now, and in the beginning it was a lot harder because I was still learning, I was still growing, and I still took things very personally, and so and I still couldn't necessarily see so clearly the abuse. And so when you get really close to your own intuition, you can recognize emotional abuse a lot more. I mean, you pick it up instantly, and so you're able to discern, okay, when you're being emotionally manipulated and when you're not. So then you don't allow somebody to hurt your feelings. Just because somebody's feelings are hurting and they try to hurt you doesn't mean you have to hurt. And that's something that I've had to learn, is nobody's ever intentionally hurting my feelings. Their feelings are hurting, and because their feelings are hurting, they want somebody else to hurt. And so they might say things, and this doesn't mean they're doing it intentionally. It doesn't mean they're doing it with malice, or they're just doing it because it's an ego. It's an ego behavior. It's an ego pattern to make them feel more superior, and it's just ego gratification. But really, it makes them avoid their emotion, and they'll avoid if they're, if it means avoiding their emotions at all costs. So the ego will do anything to avoid the emotion. So it will come up with the most extravagant lies, or the most ridiculous excuses, anything to not change its behavior or its belief or its pattern. And that's what we're doing, with healing the mother wound, is we're not passing it down to our children anymore. We want to cultivate a strong sense of self in our children, a strong sense of self-esteem, so that they can, own their power and stand in their power and not give their power away. And for too long, I gave my power away to my mom. I gave my power away to so many people, and I learned how to do this from watching my mother do this. And so, and now it's funny because we're learning it together, and we're learning and we're growing together in new ways. And sometimes it's funny because I wish we could go back then. I wished we would have had yoga back then, and me and my mom could have done yoga, and I could have felt that connection with her. And it's so nice now to have her just laying on the floor, sitting on the floor next to me, because I remember as a kid she was always busy trying to distract herself, up moving around. She couldn't just sit and be with me, and that's something that I truly needed, and that made me feel very neglected. It made me feel very abandoned. And so now meditation has given that to me, or yoga has given that to me, and I'm able to be with my body and take that time and just sit with my body and do absolutely nothing except for just sit with it and be with it. And so it is nice to see, as much as I wish it would have happened then as a kid, I'm so happy that it's happening now, and that we've had this chance to be able to see our wounds and move through them with love and compassion and understanding and forgiveness, and continue to support one another, even if we go through bumps in the road, that we can always kind of find our way back and continue to move forward and continue to because it's just a relationship, it's just a relationship you have to develop. And it's just been a very nice way to kind of seal that wound. And it feels like I've been really working on this wound for a really long time, for the last few years, because I really wanted to be more nurturing and loving and compassionate and kind and gentle, because I had to be more like that towards myself, because I tended to beat myself up and be highly critical, because that's what I learned, and so I really had to change my inner dialogue, and that's what my mother wound has helped me to do, is how to truly nurture myself and be there for myself. So I'm really grateful for that. I hope this was helpful to you. I hope it's healing for you. I'm sending you so much love and so much care, and I'll be back next time. I'm sending you lots of love.